The following episode was recorded for my podcast, Abundant Thinking. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, and Pandora Music. If you are somebody who enjoys listening to video or audio podcasts, I would highly recommend you check it out. Link in the description. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Abundant Thinking. Today, we are going to be going over 4 common mistakes that I see that people make when they're trying to start something new. Let's hop right into it. The first mistake that I see is people comparing themselves. One of the hardest things when I was starting this podcast was not comparing myself to other people, right? Not looking up to Joe Rogan and saying to myself, wow, dude, I'm nowhere near this guy. I'm not doing as good as he is. Or, people that are upcoming, Chris Williamson, oh, he's doing really good. How come I'm not doing that? The number one thing that you guys should all be optimizing, quote unquote, for is your own ability to improve over time. You need to measure against yourself. And this works for a couple of reasons. The first one is if you're doing, measuring yourself, you are going to get better over time. Sometimes it's very hard to see the progress that you've made over time because you're so busy worrying about the future. You think to yourself, okay, I want to get this person on my podcast. I want to improve my equipment, all of that. But you don't realize that 6 months ago, you were in a much worse spot. I'll give you guys a really good example. So for those of you guys that are watching on video, even if you're listening to this on audio, you see that my equipment is not horrible right now, right? It was lent to me by a friend, so that's a little bit of a independent variable, if you will. But I will tell you guys, when I first started this podcast, I used to hook up just the craziest equipment. I would have my microphone standing on a bunch of books, or I would have this pop filter connected to a gallon of water. I have it somewhere. I have a picture. It's actually very funny. But, when you look back and you think to yourself, oh my God, look how far I've come, rather than look how far I need to go still in order to achieve my goals, it's a very freeing feeling. It's very important for you guys to understand that. And studies have shown that upwards social comparisons, which means comparing oneself to someone perceived as better, can result in feelings of inadequacies, lower self esteem, and reduced motivation to pursue your goals. Another study published in the Journal of Educational Psychology indicated that individuals who frequently compare themselves to others had lower levels of self efficacy. This decrease in self-efficacy negatively impacted their motivation and performance, reducing the likelihood of sustained effort in future endeavors. We're not done. A study published in Personality and Individual Differences found that individuals who regularly compare themselves to others experience higher levels of envy, anxiety, and depression. And this makes sense, right? If you're always comparing yourself to other people, you're going to realize that you're nowhere close to where you want to be. Also, the goalpost moves. If you are someone who has reached the level that they want to be at, you're in a business and you've hit that $1 million a year in profit, rather than celebrating yourself, because this is, comparing yourself, this is a skill you must learn. You must learn how to go into the past and say, oh my God, a year ago, I wasn't even making 10,000 a year. Now I'm making $1 million. With this example, once you make the $1 million, you're gonna be like, okay, well now I want to make $5 million. Now I want to make $10 million. So it's all about the goalpost moving. Once you hit your goal, you want to hit the next goal. Once you hit that goal, you want to keep going, and you're never gonna see how much progress you've made over time. There was research published in the Journal of Consumer Research that examined the behavioral consequences of social comparison in consumer contexts. The study found that when individuals compared their progress to others, they were more likely to feel discouraged and abandon their goals. This effect was particularly strong when the comparison highlighted a significant disparity in progress or achievement. There are a lot of examples that you or someone else could have done something, the same thing as somebody else, and not gotten the same results, right? I have a friend who lifts just as much as my entire friend group, but his results aren't always the same. If you live your life comparing yourself to other people, it's going to be very tough for you to understand how much hard work can actually help you. They might think to themselves, "Oh my God, I'm putting in the same work. Why am I not getting the same results?" Because you're comparing yourself. I think the biggest thing is not comparing yourself outward, but comparing yourself inward. So when you see somebody else doing good, you don't see all the work they put in. You don't see what they had to go through in order to make that results of their work this apparent. A lot of people will tell me, "Oh, dude, like you ask really good questions. Like your podcasting is good, right?" I mean, not to float my own boat here, but sometimes it happens. And I'm like, dude, it takes a lot of practice. It's not like I just wake up and I'm just good at this. I talk to people. You need to ask questions if you want to get better. And I think asking yourself the question first of how much have I improved in this one thing over time is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. Number two is the fear of failure. A lot of people, before they even start, will already give up. This is a sad reality for a lot of people for the mere fact that it has failed for them in the past, so they don't think they can do it in the future. I think some people that may have had good results in the past are at an advantage because, in a way, it's a snowball effect. If they think they did good in this one thing, then they'll keep going. This next thing they'll do good. This next thing they'll do good, and they're going to put in the work, right? But what about on the other side of the table for the people that are not necessarily, doing good, maybe have failed in the past? How can we get to a point where people are able to switch their mentality and think to themselves, wow, I may have failed at this thing in the past, but how not only has it impacted me up until this point, but how can I change my narrative? Two people that come up to mind that I've spoken with before is Trish Blackwell and Christina LaCure. I suggest you guys check out my podcast episodes with them. We talked a lot about confidence. They're both extremely successful confidence coaches, some of the best in this entire niche. And I remember talking about this thing with them where I mentioned, a lot of people have these negative narratives about themselves because they failed in the past. So, how can we get them to the point where they switch it up and instead of thinking negatively, they can think positively? And both of their answers on separate occasions were actually quite similar. They said, rather than looking at the bad, look at the good. How has this failure helped you? How has, this might have steered you off path a little bit. You didn't expect to fail, you didn't expect to fall, to trip, but how are you going to get back up on your feet and keep going? Because this isn't the end of the world, right? Pretend you once learn how to skateboard and then you fall. You got to learn how to get up and do it again. You can't let one fall completely ruin, you know, your chance of ever doing it again. And guess what? The best in the world have fallen more times than people that are just regulars. I know Kobe Bryant, he even said one time, took the least, or no, I took the most amount of shots, but I also missed the most amount of shots, which I think is awesome because it's like he was willing to miss all of those shots in order to be the person who made the most, or in this case, who took the most. A lot of people are afraid of failing, but you need to fail. You need to get those negative reps in order to make yourself better. And I would even argue that when you fail, you kind of get better at the thing so much more than if you succeed. I know Alex Hermosi, I'm paraphrasing here, says, I would rather fail and know why than to succeed and not know what caused it, which I think is awesome because it's very true. You want to know why you failed so you can optimize for it in the future, so you can avoid that same mistake. Somebody who keeps making the same mistake again doesn't learn. When you fail, if you're able to succeed next time, that means you learned, which I think is absolutely amazing. It is huge. So, number one, stop comparing yourself. Number two, fear of failure. Number three is bad goal setting. A lot of people will say to themselves, I want to hit 10,000 followers by the end of the year, but there's no way to measure that. You don't know how many people are going to watch your videos. You don't know. I mean, you can make an estimated guess. Okay, I've had 5,000 viewers in the past 30 days. So my goal next month is to have 7,000. That, in a way, is a little bit measurable, but something that I love to do, and I've noticed a lot of very successful people do, is they say, okay, I'm just going to work 4 hours today. Results are independent, but the input is the goal. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to get something out of it. And if I don't, that's okay, because eventually I will. Because you might not know how you're going to get to 10,000 followers, but you're going to work for 4 hours. You're going to find something to do, and if you can manage to do it, then those inputs of you working 4 hours, 5 hours, however long it is, you're going to get an output of that, which I think is a very good way of thinking about it. Goal setting is super important because on top of the first point that we talked about of comparing ourselves, sometimes we think, okay, I want to be like Joe Rogan. I want to upload 5 times a week. I want to have the highest quality, but sometimes that's not possible for us. So you need to know what is within your restrictions, what's in your boundaries, and how you can play, how you can pivot from where you are in your position. Right? It's like how I'm in this place where I just started learning how to skateboard. Not actually, I'm just giving an example, but you just started learning how to skateboard. Don't expect to be like Tony Hawk in 7 days because he practices for 4 hours a day. Don't do that because you're starting new. Maybe learn how to do a new trick. Or say, I'm just going to skateboard for 2 hours today and see how much better I can get. That is so much easier to measure than saying, okay, by the end of the year, I want to be the best in the world. Because what does that mean to be the best in the world? You don't know. But you know what it means to go outside for 5 hours, go to the skate park and practice. Because that's measured. You can do that whenever you want. All you need is 5 hours and a skateboard. And some safety equipment, I guess. So setting goals is super important. And not enough people know how to do it, which is why I want to push it a lot more. People talk about goal setting all the time. I hear it. Sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of how people say to set goals because they make it sound like this thing. Oh, you have to set goals on this. You have to do this. But they don't realize the fact that that's bad goal setting. Make something that's measurable rather than something that's immeasurable, and an input rather than an output is what I would say. In my experience, being able to tell myself, okay, every day I'm going to work for 2 hours on my podcast has been a lot more helpful than saying, okay, I'm going to reach 10,000 followers by the end of the month because it's hard to measure. So that's number 3, bad goal setting. And number 4, something that you need to look deep within yourself to do is a high ego or just an ego in general. A lot of times people will think that, oh, I know this thing. Like I know everything about it. I just started doing this podcast and I'm learning these things and I feel like I just know everything. And I don't know who said this, but there's a very famous quote that says, the more you like get into something, the more you realize how little you know. And that's why a lot of times you'll hear the most successful people in a field, scientists, psychologists, they'll say, I'm not 100% sure about this, but from what I understand, blah, 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 blah. Right? Because things are always changing. There might not be a definite answer for this one thing. And it's important to put your ego to the side because your ego can stop you from doing so much. If you think you know everything, you will block off people's advice and what people might be telling you. I think another important thing is being able to know whose advice you should take because you should only be taking advice from people who are where you want to be or have the knowledge that you want to obtain. If you don't want to end up like Billy, then don't take Billy's advice because he doesn't know what you want. Right? However, if you don't want to end up like Billy, but you know Billy might be smart in a certain field, he might know a lot about cars, then you might want to ask him for advice about cars, but not about how to stay disciplined and how to use the motivation for good. Right? Something that's super important, just to go over comparing yourself. I mentioned over 3 studies with evidence that had to do with comparing yourself and how it leads to low self esteem. It can be bad for your relationships, feelings of inadequacy. Sorry, guys, I can't English. Less motivation to pursue goals, etc. Super important. I think if I can highlight one, it would be that. Do not compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to you. Number 2, fear of failure. Alex Hormozy says, hard work deters anxiety. If you have a fear of failure, work harder. Number 3 is bad goal setting. You don't want to say, I want to get 10,000 followers by this month. You say, I want to work this many hours, this many minutes, do this many things today, and do that every day. And number 4 is having a high ego. The more you think you know about something, the less experienced and the less you have been in that certain field, especially if you think you have mastered something. Unless you have been doing it for years and years and years and years and years, chances are you have a lot more to learn than you think. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Again, we are not sponsored, so please follow and hit the bell notification icon so you stay up to date with episodes that we post. Every Tuesday, 8 a.m. I'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.